Hi, very good afternoon, everyone. Today I've been asked to talk about strategies, platforms, and partnerships that are reinventing media business. I think it's quite an irony as everyone knows that media business is being disrupted, and a lot of this disruption is actually coming from you guys. So actually, we should be the ones learning from a lot of the things that you've done. But yes, I think for traditional media business, the last 5 to 10 years, has been very tough for many of us. I think all of us have seen revenues dropped in more developed markets like the US and Europe. I think the tipping point has happened. For us in Southeast Asia, I think we've already started seeing a lot of disruption, a lot of threat or rather pressures, on our revenue. So I think a lot of us now, are in this position where we have to ask ourselves, so what next? And I think the earlier panel was a very good example of how traditional media and the digital startups, can perhaps collaborate, partner, do M&A to really help traditional media to address, the digital disruption head on. For the media industry, for the last 5 to 10 years, we were always told that, hey, you got to think of digital first. So it may be second nature to many of you, digital first as startups, but for traditional media, imagine 50 years, 100 years, of doing things in a certain way, in the traditional way. For us to really start thinking of digital first, is itself a big challenge. But we didn't even have time to sink in when maybe 2, 3 years ago we've been told, hey, forget about digital first, it's mobile first now. For a lot of us, especially in Southeast Asia, mobile represents more than 50% of the traffic of the users that we have on our platform. And so now we've got to really start thinking of our mobile web, our mobile apps, even before we actually think of what we want to put on the desktop. But this is not even static. I think a couple of days ago, Google says, oh, no more mobile first, it's AI first now. So I think it's going to be even more challenging for us to understand, how do we play in this, in this new AI area. So is there a silver bullet, or is there clear strategies for media companies to actually reach the Holy Grail? Or, are we really moving around in a maze trying to find, that right strategy for us to be able to counter or to be able to grow our companies again? I think before I talk about strategies, there's something else that I think is more important than strategy, and that's culture. As they say, culture is strategy for breakfast. Again, culture for startups is very, very natural, second nature, innovation and all. But for traditional companies, to be able to change, to be able to have a different mindset is a big challenge. But I think it is first and foremost very important for us media companies to really take note that this is a challenge that we need to overcome. So one of the things we did in SPH when we first set up a digital business unit a couple of years ago was to see how we could inculcate a culture of innovation, a culture of creativity, and a culture of enterprise. So first things, that we had to realize very quickly is that a lot of our employees in this new age, whether it's the millennials, even the Gen X, even Gen Y, a lot of us actually have a lot of ideas that previously perhaps in a top-down culture, we've not been able to share, we've not been able to actually give our ideas very openly. So one of the things that we had to do, firstly, was to really break down the barriers, to have a physical open space for people to talk a lot more, to communicate, to collaborate, to really be able to work, in a collaborative manner, forming agile teams. I think there was something that a lot of startups already do right from the beginning. But for traditional media, moving from the traditional way of doing development, from the waterfall method to agile, takes a lot of unlearning as well. Secondly, a lot of us in the media industry, we've been very impacted by the digital disruption because we have not been focusing on innovation. We have not been focusing on incubating new ideas. So one of the things that we've done over the last 2-3 years now is to really come up with a platform, which we call SPH Digital Brewery, where we invite our employees to actually give their ideas and actually self-form teams to be able to pitch their ideas to management. And through this incubation, we've managed to come up with good new ideas, whether it's an idea of a new feature for an existing product, or it could be an idea for a new product altogether. Next, user experience. This is something that we've also had to learn, but which is a very, very core important aspect of coming up with a good product that focuses on the user. So the whole idea of understanding the whole user journey, of understanding how users would convert onto our site, this is something that we now have to actually have a team to do that. We have to do a lot more user research before we start a project. We have to do a lot more user research even as we undertake the process of developing a good feature, a new feature, or a new product. Another thing in terms of changing the mindset, which is very important for media companies to take note, is that we need to be a data-driven organization, to use data to make our decisions better. I think previously, when the traditional media company wanted to launch a new product, we would just do some basic research and we just launch it. But by the time we get the feedback from the ground, it may be a bit too late to be able to change that product. But in digital, instantly, the moment you roll out a new feature, the moment you roll out a new product, you'll be able to get the response. Is this converting well compared to the previous product or the previous feature? Also, when we are doing testing, using data by doing A/B testing is very, very useful. I mean, we can just segment that to a small, say, 5%, 10% of our user base to really test new ideas and be able to change instantly. So the road may be long, for a lot of us media companies, which are really just about, moving aggressively now into the digital space. But there are a lot of technologies, there are a lot of partners out there that we can really use to help us, to be able to journey along the way. Previously, or even up to now, in the traditional part of the business, for us, SPH would be our newspapers. A lot of what we read in the paper is decided by the editor. The editor would think that, hey, I think that this should be on the first page of the Straits Times tomorrow. Or for the very matter, the editor will decide, okay, I think perhaps we should allocate a couple of pages for financial news, maybe more for sports if there's a sporting season, or maybe Asian news, could be the flavor of the month. But this may have worked in the past, but in today's age, it is very difficult to be everything for everyone. And what technology and platforms have given us now is the capability to personalize your content exactly to what a user wants. So for example, if we know that this reader likes to read a lot of tech news, he's a tech geek, he wants to know what are the latest gadgets, he wants to read more reviews about such gadgets. Through technology, we are able to then recommend the right kind of articles for this reader. For that matter, someone who prefers more financial news, someone who's working in the financial sector, we would, based on his or her reading habit, now be able to send him to recommend and to personalize his version of the Straits Times for the day. So here are some of the examples, that we have now executed on the Straits Times, where we can actually recommend stories that we think, based on his, or her reading habits over a period of time, would enable a better click-through rates. For me, I've been in the media industry now for over 20 years, and I remember when I first started, I was told this: content is king. Well, I think yes, it used to be content is king, whereby if you have a good paper, if you have good content, you are able to get the user loyal to you, the reader loyal to you. You'll be able to engage him or her, for a long time. Unfortunately, in today's day and age, where our readers are exposed to so many different types of media platforms, we need to go beyond content. We need to have content plus to be able to engage the reader now. So whether it is membership clubs, whether it's new events, whether it's social media monetization, new areas like even the dating business. So for SPH, what we've done, we've actually created, subscriptions to niche areas, like for example, golf. We have a SPH golf club now that our readers can sign on to. We actually maintain their handicap for them. They can get good discounted green fees at various clubs. We also have a wine club that we actually sell wine subscription. Today, we also organize one of the most popular and biggest runs in Singapore, the Straits Times Run. We also do events, like organizing the largest car show in Singapore, and jobs fairs as well. Monetization, this is a very big topic for a lot of us in the media industry. I think a lot of us have been banking on digital monetizing through advertising revenues. But is that alone enough to help us pay our bills? I think digital advertising has been very challenged, what with ad fraud, with ad blocking. I think to a certain extent, we may not have been that affected yet. I think in Southeast Asia, the rate of users putting on ad blockers is maybe about 5–10%. But in more developed markets, it is 20–30%. And unfortunately, I think that day will come to us as well. So what can we do as media owners to really try and increase our advertising use, our advertising revenues? Again, using technology, getting a good data management platform will allow us to actually target audience very carefully. So for example, if you are, as a client, you want to target people who are interested in travel, we would be able to, through our whole network, and profile a traveler, someone who is interested in travel, and follow the person, whether the person is reading on the Straits Times, whether the person is going to our Share Investor website, or whether the person is coming to our car vertical SG Carmart. But again, is all this enough? I think the biggest question that many of us, media companies, especially traditional publishers, are facing is that, should we start charging for content? And this is something that the Straits Times had taken a very, very hard look at, and we have actually also now joined others like the New York Times, Washington Post, in actually starting to charge for content. So we have actually introduced a paywall where the first, say, 15 articles are free. Beyond that, 15 to 30, you've got to register, and beyond 30, you've actually got to pay for the subscription. And I think just like the New York Times, we've had pretty good feedback so far that our revenues have started to increase, our conversions to subscription have started to increase, and at the same time, the drop-off in the numbers of page views and users have not impacted us a lot. Finally, I would also like to talk about Digital Advertising Alliance. I think it's a known fact that in digital advertising, Facebook and Google are the ones taking, 70%, maybe in some markets even 80% of the budget. while the rest of us, whether it is SPH, whether it's Star, Straits Times, Compass, we are all actually fighting for that 20-30%. So should we then look perhaps at an alliance of premium publishers coming together to be able to try and create critical mass of audience, for our users? I think, if we do that, we are able to provide scale. We would have, a wealth of rich data. We would be able to provide a convenience one-stop shop for brand advertisers. Allows us to target audience targeting a lot better, giving very much better accurate measurements. And most importantly, I think, in this whole age where brand safety is very, very important, I think as premium publishers, we are the ones who are able to provide the safest environment for brands to be able to place their advertising on. So the idea of a digital advertising alliance is not new. I think around the world there has been many alliances that have formed. But I think in this part of the world, there is an opportunity, whether it is within country or whether it is amongst countries. So I think this is something that I would also like to put out to all the media publishers out there. Is that something that we could perhaps do together, for the Southeast Asia region? So yes, digital disruption has certainly made our life a lot more challenging. But I think there is a lot of innovation that we could do if we use the right platforms, if we use the right strategies, adopt the right culture and mindset, and most importantly, collaborate with each other. Collaborate and partner with each other. Thank you very much.